Hi everyone, my name is Deanna Ting and I am the Senior Hospitality Editor over at Skift, and I'm joined right now by Vacasa Chief Legal Officer Lisa Jurnika. And so Lisa, you joined Vacasa as its first Chief Legal Officer in just last year, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and your main role is to sort of help the company scale effectively and also potentially seek an IPO.
I mean,
that's about it.
That was the initial plan.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
So my first question for you is a simple one. When will Vacasa IPO?
That's a very simple question. That is a really good question. Currently, we are not, as you know, in the process of going public. We always consider the possibility, but the fact is that right now we don't have a need to go public. Our growth has continued to be, 60% year over year. We're doing well. We just don't see that there's a necessity right now to go to the public markets. There's a lot of burden that comes with becoming a public company, as you know. I've worked at a couple of public companies. I know that live and die by the quarter, and I think that there's not the appetite this moment to move in that direction. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but to answer your question on when.
How big would the company need to be in order to sort of feel like it's ready to IPO? Or
So I think currently we feel that we are big enough to do that. It's just we don't feel the need to go to the public markets just yet.
Okay.
Yeah, and there'd be a number of factors that have to come into play for it to be the right scenario. So, the confluence of market conditions, us continuing to be on the growth trajectory that we are on, executive team ready, financial system scaled, all the things that we are working on currently, but we are not working on them with the specific goal that we have to go public.
Would you say that's sort of a trend these days, like companies not necessarily feeling the pressure to go IPO immediately, like really taking their time?
I think so, because you're seeing some situations with companies who have, and then it doesn't turn out so well, like a Blue Apron. I'm not using a vacation rental industry example, but there are a number of companies that, have not fared as well. So not that we're concerned about that, it's just that we don't feel the need to go in that direction right now at the second.
And you're relatively new to the vacation rental industry, right?
Yes.
What were your initial thoughts about the vacation rental industry, and have those thoughts changed since you joined this industry?
That's a good question. So before I started, I'd had experiences with Vacasa and Turnkey and other vacation rental services, and I always enjoyed them.
As a consumer, right?
As a
guest.
As a consumer, exactly. I have a software and e-commerce background, so this was definitely a brand new world for me to enter into. My thoughts, I guess, it's more around what were the surprises once I entered. And one, which I mentioned in the last panel that we had, was just how huge the vacation rental industry actually is, and the opportunity for property management companies to succeed, and just the growth in terms of, we're having new generations who are more and more interested. We're seeing that people, to use vacation rentals, we're seeing statistics where individuals who stay in vacation rentals, once they do, they prefer those over hotels. So back on the question of kind of the things that surprised me, I think it was just the opportunity, just an amazing opportunity. Also, I did not realize how people-centric the vacation rental industry actually is. You have your guests, you have your owners, you have your employees, you have a number of stakeholders, and it's just so very people-centric, which I didn't experience in the software and e-commerce business.
Right. Is it more fragmented than you thought it would be as well in some ways, or?
The overall industry?
Yeah,
I guess I would say it's somewhat fragmented. I think that companies like Vacasa and Turnkey, we we are in a spot where it's only a small portion of the available opportunity. We also have, homeowners who are renting, and then we have the OTAs, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity to expand.
Right, a lot of different players involved as well. So I asked this question of one of your industry colleagues, Jen Ford, the CFO of Turnkey as well. I asked her this question, and I'm wondering if you sort of feel the same way, but do you feel like growth in this sector is kind of becoming a numbers game, speaking of fragmentation and how large it is, but also, the pursuit of scale, is that sort of like the number one goal or objective for companies like yours?
I think it's methodical scale. I don't know that I would say this is just a numbers game. I think in Vacasa's case, we're focused on moving into markets and growing organically. We actually grow organically that's much more significant in terms of our growth than our inorganic acquisition growth. We're 70%, 30%. But in terms of just general scale, it's important to us to be methodical, to move into markets where either we know we'll be successful because we have existing operations that we can, benefit from what we have in place there, or we want to enter into a new market that we're not already in, but we see the opportunity, this may be through acquisition, where there is something up and running and they're doing a wonderful job and we want to hit the ground running on day one.
Speaking of one acquisition that was recent, was Vacasa's acquisition of Oasis. Could you tell me a little bit about that particular acquisition and what you sort of intend to do with that inventory from Oasis, or with that brand and with that platform?
So I'm probably not the right person to discuss the full integration of it all, but in terms of what I can tell you as we were going into the deal what I know about what we wanted to do.
What did it symbolize?
Similar to what we were just discussing is the idea of going into markets like Chicago and Miami, where we do have some presence, but being able to take advantage of the opportunities that Oasis had created there. And then on the other side of things, moving into places where we did not have so much of a presence, Barcelona, Buenos Aires, and really capitalizing on that.
Right. Should we expect to see more like urban short-term rentals in Vacasa's inventory going forward?
So as it stands currently, that's a very small percentage of our business, the multifamily urban market business. I think last quote was around 5%. And there's a lot of, as you probably know from just industry news, there's a lot of regulation in these areas, and so it's not the most hospitable place to grow. Right. We think that the urban market structure that we've created, or that others have created and used, is really the best way to be in that market, but we're not doubling down. That is a small percentage of the portfolio.
And speaking of the regulatory landscape especially too, where do you sort of see that right now? And where do you see areas for improvement, or what are you doing in your role at Vacasa to really ensure fair regulations, or keep an eye on the regulatory battles that are happening? There's so many everywhere.
There's so many. I mean, it's
I don't
wildly.
know how you keep track of them all,
yeah, I was thinking about this question. Not that I expected it, but I'm constantly thinking of this question. When I first started at Vacasa, one of the tracking records that we have created over the years is this proprietary regulatory tracking tool that we do domestically and internationally. It's fabulous, but it's constant. It's like a constant work in progress. And I'm just so amazed at how much work it takes to continually monitor, update. It's on a day-to-day basis that things can change. So what are we doing in terms of I guess the first question that you had was around like how my role is involved in kind of trying to get involved, navigating. Yeah. So that's a great question. We're continually monitoring. We have a map that we use when we're going into different markets. Our business development teams are able to use the information that the legal team provides to help guide places to enter into. yeah, and we do our best to comply, and we do avoid areas where there is not a hospitable climate for entering.
Do you see a point where sort of we can reach sort of a point where there is sort of, fair regulatory mandates, or where everyone's sort of happy? Like
I do see that in the
communities
future.
are happy, that the vacation rental industry is happy, that the consumers are happy. That
I know it's a lot of stakeholders, but I am optimistic. As as a lawyer, you're not supposed to be, but I'm cautiously optimistic about this, that we will see that day, and I think it's because we will see demand coming from guests, from consumers, from owners. It takes time to change, right? I mean, this.
Yeah, and it varies city by city, but are there specific markets that you think are sort of getting it right, that really are balancing the needs of all the different stakeholders accordingly? Does that utopia exist, or not yet?
Not so much in the big cities. I think you're seeing some areas where they're becoming, like San Diego. If you asked me 5 months ago or so, I don't date where we are, I would have said, like, it's definitely not a hospitable climate for vacation rentals, second home vacation rentals. Things seem to be changing a little bit. I do believe that the cities are going to get it right eventually. It's just going to take a little while. It's going to take advocacy. It's going to take the owners' involvement, tourists pushing for it. We have new generations. We were just talking about this in another panel, who are, that's where they want to stay. So the demand is there.
Right. What do you sort of identify as kind of the biggest fundamental challenges in the vacation rental industry today? And what are the solutions you think are possible solutions for them?
So this is my personal opinion on challenges, putting aside regulations, because we've talked, yeah. But I think we're only addressing a small part of the needs for generating revenue for guests, obviously, and for the industry itself. By only focusing on lodging, I think that we could expand. There seems to be a growing research around having additional offerings, whether it be in local communities. So when people are traveling now, they want to have a local experience. So partnering with maybe some local food tours or wine tours, making these memorable wow experiences, like you've probably heard, and then just kind of doing things that are maybe more like the traditional resort hotel type of ancillary activities, arranging ski packages, arranging whitewater rafting, like kind of having, and I think it's starting to occur. Airbnb has their experiences, but I think the vacation rentals and companies like us, we could expand into, there's opportunity for sure, and there's definitely a need.
Right, so perhaps like companies like Vacasa sort of becoming like their own end-to-end platforms as well, or experience platforms.
Yeah, so right now, we're full service property management. We want to take care of the owners. We want to make sure that the guests have a wonderful, repeatable experience. But then also adding to that these special amenity programs, and ancillary services, things that make their trip that much more memorable, and things that will make them sticky to come back to us.
Are you concerned with sort of building up the Vacasa brand in particular, like making sure that that's a brand that the owners know and that the guests know as well?
Absolutely. Or? I mean, one of the things I remember most, we do a lot of branding, but one of the things I remember most before I worked at Vacasa was I stayed in one, and they had this nice little gift bag. It said Vacasa. We do a little swag here and there. I think it's important. Your brand is very important because you want that recognition, and that's part of the growth, the factor for growth.
Right. What happens when that brand has to contend with the entry of a massive player like Google, for instance? Like, is it a friend, a foe? Is it both? Or, is it a place for you to advertise yourself?
Well, we do use channels. I'm not sure to what extent. I'm not the best person to ask on Google, but we don't like we like to have partners. We don't like to feel that they're competitors. So with Airbnb, HomeAway, Booking.com, Expedia, we use those partners as channel partners to help distribute our listings, and so we don't view them from a competitive standpoint.
Right. Another thing I've also noticed in the industry is sort of like a convergence in hospitality. Like, I think for consumers in particular, that it's a place to stay is a place to stay, right? And we might be able to identify vacation rentals as one thing, and a boutique hotel is another, or this is a glamping thing, or but consumers kind of don't necessarily think in those ways. Is that something that you're finding as well, or that's something that Vacasa is trying to adapt to in terms of like everything kind of converging in this space, and people kind of wanting all the different options and kind of having the expectations of a hotel, but even for a vacation rental and vice versa. And
yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on, what is the consumer looking for? Are they just looking for a place to stay? Is this just all about price and location, or are they looking for a unique experience? I don't know that we're necessarily concerned. I'm probably not the best person to ask about this concern. I have a lot of other concerns, but they're not related necessarily to this one. I think that we are. What we're doing good at is we're doing good at providing a lot of alternative vacation rental offerings. And I think if you're talking about like what is the consumer looking for, we may still be at a place where price and location is the most important. But we tend to think that people are traveling more for unique experiences. They're also traveling more with families. They want to go to destinations where they can get larger rentals, which we offer, so they can have everyone under one roof. Like that's kind of our bread and butter is in those type of destinations.
And kind of going back to the fact that you kind of have entered into this industry as a bit of like someone from the outside looking in, you're relatively new to it. Is there anything that you think that this industry isn't paying enough attention to but really should be paying more attention to?
So, I mean, and aside from just like focusing on additive services, I can't say that there is something that I think needs to have much more focus. I think if we continue to look for what guests want, if we continue to look at what property managers, what owners want out of their property managers, if we can fill that gap, I think that is that's what we need to do, and that's what Vacasa continually strives to do with our service. Yeah. Anything
I didn't ask you about that you'd want to discuss or mention?
I mean, I could do a little spiel on Vacasa if you'd want to, but
in the audience who might be unfamiliar with Vacasa.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone is familiar. I know some of you are, and we're being taped, so there will be others out there who don't. So Vacasa, we provide full-service property management services. We operate in 28 states and 16 countries. We have 12,000 properties under management. We are located in the Portland, Pacific Northwest area. We have 400 employees in our Portland office, 145 employees in Boise. This is the corporate offices, and then we have 2,500 employees, field employees. We employ housekeepers, we employ maintenance folks, we have people on the street. We also have people-enabled technology. We have a housekeeping app that our housekeepers use. We have our own dynamic pricing system that helps to generate best pricing at best times. And we have a unique ability to price and fill both in the high seasons and the shoulder seasons. And that's That's basically where we're at.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.